May I speak in the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. We all make assumptions every day, either conscious assumptions or unconscious assumptions, mostly about other people. Perhaps as you're sitting here, you've made an assumption that I've washed my hands before we're going to have communion, and you'd be right to think that, because I have. They're nice and squeaky clean, so when I break the bread, I'm not going to be spreading any germs that I may have. So that's a good assumption to perhaps have, but there are plenty of other assumptions that cause difficulties in our lives. If you like, having assumptions about other people, particularly negative ones or critical ones, is a bit like what I've been hearing about in Lathrow Park, the houses up there, where builders have been filling the drains with concrete. They've been pouring liquid concrete into the drains, and it's been solidified down there, and it's causing issues with people flushing their loos and the water going away. It's true. And assumptions can be a bit like that concrete. It sort of solidifies and hardens, and it stops you from being able to receive water or to let water pass through you to go to other places. Just a local image, if you like. So I think that our readings today, as pithy and as lengthy and as meaty as they are all about assumptions that we make and God challenging those assumptions on our behalf, so that we don't fall into a situation where we lord it over other people. Assumptions that we have to think, I'm better than them. That's what assumptions can make us feel like sometimes. And if we look briefly at our readings, the reading that Charlie read us earlier on from Exodus about Moses and the people of Israel, they were in the wilderness of Sin, interesting word, but in the Judean wilderness, and they were getting really quite thirsty. This is on the back of God saying to the Israelites when they left Egypt, I will be with you always. I will give you what you need when you need it. But they were so concentrating on their own thirst and their need that's where their assumptions were being made, that God has abandoned us. God has left us to die out here in the wilderness. What are we to do? What are we to do? And rather than challenging their assumptions, Moses goes and takes their complaint to God. And that makes God quite cross. God says, okay, I'll give you what you want. I'll give you the water to slake your thirst. But know this, that I would have given you what you wanted when you needed it. You did not have to go and complain to me about it and cause a rumpus. So he wasn't best pleased. And we also read about that in our psalm today, from Psalm 93, the Venite, as we know it. In our reading from the Gospel of John, there's a lot of assumptions going on there that Jesus is teasing out and facing up to and making people think about what those assumptions look like. And there's about 5 or 6 that I've highlighted in my sheet. The first one is that Jesus sets up an assumption to begin with. He is in Samaria. Now, for a Jew, an Orthodox Jew, a Jewish rabbi, to be in Samaria, that was a pretty eyebrow-raising thing to do. Samaritans, as we know from the parable of the Good Samaritan, were people out with the normal Jewish hierarchy and the Jewish population who were considered to be saved. They were Samaritans. They were on the outskirts, beyond the pale, if you like. So he's in Samaria, and he's engineering an encounter. And when you're in Samaria and you're sitting by a well, the chances are that you're going to encounter a woman, because women were the people who brought the water to their households, having carried heavy water jars to and from the well. So he was going to be meeting a Samaritan woman and talking with her. And that was a pretty controversial thing for Jesus to do. And yet he did it. He did it to challenge assumptions from people maybe who would have read John's Gospel in the diaspora around the Mediterranean, to say, actually, Jesus was there to preach the good news of God, to bring the good news of God's love and forgiveness to people, both Jews and non-Jews. And we see that a lot in the synoptics, but in John's gospel, which is a very Jewish gospel, and speaking about the Jews a lot, saying, actually, no, this is beyond the Jewish hierarchy, and Jesus was going out there to meet other people too, and people who folk would necessarily assume would be outside of that issue of being saved or being given salvation by God. Also, the woman is assuming that what Jesus is saying is actually literal, that Jesus wants to have a drink. Give me a drink. Jesus' opening gambit, I suppose, if you like. We might assume that Jesus was being a bit rude, really, saying, give me a drink, saying by a well, like me going to somebody's house and saying, give me a cup of tea, straight away. But it's more like Jesus saying, I am needy, I need your help. Giving a sort of parity between him and the woman. I need you to help me. And in so doing, we can have a conversation. And the conversation is about water. Jesus saying, I want to give you the water of life. And the woman thinking, but water's the stuff of the earth. It's down that well then. You've got no bucket. Jesus peeling away her assumptions to say, actually, I am here for you, and I am the person that can give you what you need. Listen to me and drink from me, if you like, metaphorically speaking, and you will be given God's love and forgiveness for all your life, for all the stuff that you've been through, all your many husbands that you've got through, 4 or 5 of them, who knows? Who knows what the history of that is? But there's a sense of dubiousness around that, or a sense of slight being slightly sullied, if you like. And Jesus is saying that does not matter. What matters is that you hear what I have to say, and that you, as an evangelist, if you like, can go to your people and tell them what you've heard. So that's what she does. She allows Jesus to peel back her assumptions, and through this conversation that leads through water, through being a prophet, she may not have got the entire message, but she's got enough to go to her people to say, this is somebody special. Come and listen to him. Come to the living water and be refreshed. That's what Jesus was after, and that's finally what he managed to do with a bit of persuasion, a bit of persistence, and love and patience. And then we go back to the disciples. Now, the people who we would have assumed would be in tune with what Christ was saying. They would have understood that he was speaking in metaphor, in things that weren't necessarily all to do with the stuff of the world, and yet they don't. They come back with the food from the city, and they assume that he's hungry and needs to be fed, and they're saying, have something to eat. And he says, I have food that you do not know about. Now, rather than saying, hang on a minute, what might this mean, and asking him the question, so what is this food? And he would tell them. They say, well, he's obviously got some food hidden away somewhere. They just didn't get it. They didn't get it, like the woman didn't get it. And perhaps even then, this dichotomy, if you like, or the contrast between the woman who was a Samaritan outsider who did finally get it, who was doing God's work, and the disciples who were with Christ day in, day out, and yet were still finding it hard to comprehend what he was saying. I think that actually gives us a sense of relief, and a sense that no matter how hard we find our faith, and how much we might find ourselves on the periphery of it, God uses all of us to spread the news of God's love and forgiveness, if we can get past our assumptions. If we can do something that says, people out there don't want to know about God. We're just going to come to church, do our stuff here, not just you, but people generally at church. This is a gross generalisation, but they will come to church, they do their stuff in church, and they go home again. Rather than thinking we're coming to church so that our assumptions can be broken down, and we can find the way to be brave, and the courage to go into our workplaces, into the places where we live, on our streets, when it's safe to do so, and converse with people, and through words, perhaps, definitely through action, express the love of God and God's forgiveness in who we are and what we do for God. Now, I'm videoing this and I'm going to put it on the website, so hopefully people who aren't here today can ruminate on these words too. But whether or not they watch this or not, I would ask you to think about what your assumptions are, your conscious and unconscious assumptions every day about other people, about yourself, about your faith, about God, about Christ, and not beat yourself up about them, but just own them and say, what do I need to change? What do I need to change about my views about other people, about what I presume other people think about me as a Christian? What do I need to change so that God's love and forgiveness may be known throughout the world? This little spark of God's love may again be reignited in a sense of bursting free, if you like, from the tomb. And not necessarily our pews filled up with more people, but at least lots more people are conscious of God's love for them and know it. And we can tackle this epidemic of mental health issues, of people not looking after themselves, not treating themselves as God would want them to treat themselves or to be treated, so that they can flourish and become those children of God who God has made them to be. So God bless you in that endeavour, and know that you have the power to do so. No matter how frail or mobile you are, you have the power to make a change. And God bless you as you do that. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.